Hello and welcome to week number 5 of ACT Reading for Owls. In today's lesson, we are going to read a practice passage. This is a social sciences passage, and it's actually two different passages put together. They're both about the history of apples, not computers, but the actual delicious fruit. We are going to answer practice questions 11 through 20. I'm going to leave you with big tip number 3, and I'll let you know what we're going to be doing next week. Like I said, practice passage number 2 is actually two different excerpts put together side by side about the history of the apple. In just a minute, I'm going to screen share the passage and questions. If you want, though, you can find a PDF of the passage and the questions using the link in the description below. The practice exam that we have linked below contains 4 passages. We are only doing the second one today. We did the first passage in video number 4 last week, and we're going to do the other 2 passages, number 3 and 4, over the next 2 videos. I'm going to survey the questions and read this passage out loud. If you want, you can fast forward this video when I start reading if you'd rather read the passage on your own rather than have me read it to you. And a note on timing. The time that it takes we do this together is going to be longer than what you would take for a passage like this on the real ACT because I'm going to be pausing and explaining items and answers, which doesn't, of course, happen when you take a real ACT. All right, let's go ahead and flip over here to the passage. So here we see passage number 2, social science. Before I even read this, I'm going to take a really quick walk through the questions. Number 11, the author's use of the words and phrases thickets, stretching in every direction, and extensive forest in passage A most nearly serves to emphasize which the following. The author of passage A most likely states the wild apples growing in the Tian Shan look like apples found at the local grocery store to support the point that. Passage A makes which the following claims about plant species that are found in Kazakhstan. Moving on to B, passage B most strongly suggests that Vavilov was motivated to become an agricultural scientist primarily because the author of passage B uses the phrase whittle away to refer to the way apple varieties have been. As it is used in lines 82 through 83, the phrase named and nurtured most nearly means. In passage B, it can most reasonably be inferred from the third paragraph that centers of crop diversity became crucially important when. And finally, I'm going to have to compare these passages and put them together. Ooh, number 18, which of the following statements best describes the difference in the tone of the passages? Compared to the author of passage A, the author of B provides more info about. And passage A quotes Vavilov as saying, I could see with my own eyes that I had stumbled upon the center of origin of the apple. In passage B, this quote is directly. All right. Now that we have a few different ideas of what to keep an eye out for, let's go ahead and start reading. Passage A by Erika Janik. In early September of 1929, Nikolai Vavilov, famed Russian plant explorer and botanist, arrived in the Central Asian crossroads of Alma-Ata, Kazakhstan. Climbing up the Zalezhsky Alato slopes of the Tian Shan Mountains separating Kazakhstan from China, Vavilov found thickets of wild apples stretching in every direction, an extensive forest of fruit colored russet red, creamy yellow, and vibrant pink. Nowhere else in the world do apples grow thickly as a forest or with such incredible diversity. Amazed by what he saw, Vavilov wrote, I could see with my own eyes that I had stumbled upon the center of origin for the apple. I remember hearing about that quote when we were surveying the questions. With extraordinary prescience and few facts, Vavilov suggested that the wild apples he had seen growing in the Tian Shan were in fact the ancestors of the modern apple. He tracked the whole process of domestication to the mountains near Alma-Ata, where the wild apples looked awfully similar to the apples found at the local grocery. Unfortunately, Vavilov's theory would remain mostly unknown for decades. Exactly where the apple came from had long been a matter of contention and discussion among people who study plant origins. Vavilov, imprisoned by Joseph Stalin in 1940 for work in plant genetics that challenged Stalin's beliefs, died in a Leningrad prison in 1943. Only after the fall of communism in Russia did Vavilov's theory, made more than half a century earlier, become widely recognized. As Vavilov predicted, it's now believed that all of the apples known today are direct descendants of the wild apples that evolved in Kazakhstan. Apples do not comprise all of Kazakhstan's plant bantu, however. At least 157 other plant species found in Kazakhstan are either direct precursors or close wild relatives of domesticated crops, including 90% of all cultivated temperate fruits. The name of Kazakhstan's largest city, Alma-Ata, or Almaty as it is known today, even translates as father of apples, or, according to some, where the apples are. So this news about the apple's origins were probably no surprise to residents, particularly in towns where apple seedlings are known to grow up through the cracks in the pavements. The apple has been evolving in Central Asia for upwards of 4.5 million years. Moving on to passage B by Gary Nobbin. Nikolai Vavilov is widely regarded as the world's greatest plant explorer, for he made over 250,000 seed, fruit, and tuber collections on 5 continents. Kazakh conservationist Tatiana Salova credits him with first recognizing that Kazakhstan was the center of origin and diversity for apples. It is not surprising, she concedes, that when Vavilov first came to Kazakhstan to look at plants, he was so amazed. Nowhere else in the world do apples grow as a forest. That is one reason why he stated that this is probably where the apple was born. This was its birthing grounds. Discerning where a crop originated and where the greatest portion of its genetic diversity remains extant may seem esoteric to the uninitiated. But knowing where exactly our food comes from, geographically, culturally, and genetically, is of paramount importance to the rather small portion of our own species that regularly concerns itself with the issue of food security. The variety of foods that we keep in our fields, orchards, and secondarily in our seed banks is critically important in protecting our food supply from plagues, crop diseases, catastrophic weather, and political upheavals. Vavilov himself was personally motivated to become an agricultural scientist by witnessing several famines during the Tsarist era of Russia. He hoped that by combining a more diverse seed portfolio with knowledge from both traditional farmers and collaborating scientists, the number of Russian families suffering from hunger might be reduced. In a very real sense, the forests of wild foragers and the orchards of traditional farmers and such centers of crop diversity are the wellsprings of diversity that plant breeders, pathologists, and entomologists return to every time our society whittles the resilience in our fields and orchards down to its breaking point. And whittle away we have done. I remember seeing the word whittle in some questions. Here in North America, according to apple historian Dan Bussey, some 16,000 apple varieties have been named and nurtured over the last 4 centuries. By 1904, however, the identities and sources of only 7,098 of those varieties could be discerned by USDA scientist W.H. Reagan. Since then, some 6,121 apple varieties, 86.2% of Reagan's 1904 inventory, have been lost from nursery catalogs, farmers' markets, and from the American table. Now that we've read those passages, I'm going to read each question out loud and model how I'm going to answer it. I will provide an opportunity for you to pause the video and try to find the answer yourself before I reveal what the answer is. I recommend having a scrap piece of paper to write down your answers or to take notes. If you want, you can also open up a note on your computer or just a Word document. Answers in case you miss one are also going to be listed on the next slide. So flipping back to the passage here. Number 11. The author's use of the words and phrases thickets, stretching in every direction, and extensive forest in passage A most nearly serves to emphasize which of the following points. We've got A, the Tian Shan Mountains are a challenge to navigate. B, the apple varieties of Kazakhstan would be difficult for a botanist to catalog. C, the diversity of plant species in Kazakhstan is crucially important. And D, the magnitude of wild apples in Kazakhstan is stunning. Let's go back up to lines 6 and 7 and take a look at that. Here we go. Climbing up the Zaylajiski-Alato slopes of the Tian Shan Mountains separating Kazakhstan from China, Vavilov found thickets of wild apples stretching in every direction and extensive forest of fruit colored russet red, creamy yellow, and vibrant pink. Nowhere else in the world do apples grow thickly as a forest or with such incredible diversity. See if you can't find an answer. All right. The correct answer for number 11 is clearly D. The magnitude of wild apples in Kazakhstan is stunning. The variety and diversity really strikes the author, and that comes through in the emotion and the language used. Thickets stretching in every direction, extensive forest, even the beautiful descriptions of all the different colors. All that really does serve to underline the diversity, and magnitude is going to mean incredibly large amount. So D is the right answer for number 11. This was, by the way, a craft and structure question. Moving on to number 12, the author of passage A most likely states that the wild apples growing in the Tian Shan looked like apples found at the local grocery store to support the point that, is it F, many of the apples stocked in grocery stores are harvested in the Tian Shan? G, in the Tian Shan, Vavilov had likely found the wild ancestors of the domesticated apple. H, the wild apples growing in the Tian Shan are among the most popular varieties with consumers. Or J, in the Tian Shan, Vavilov had found new apple varieties to introduce to food producers. Take a moment and see if you can't find the answer. By the way, feel free to pause the video if I don't give you enough time to think. You can always pause it and then play it when you found an answer and you're ready to continue listening. Okay. The right answer for number 12 is G. In the Tianshan, Vavilov had likely found the wild ancestors of the domesticated apple. This is an integration of knowledge and ideas question, which tend to be a little bit trickier. There's the fewest number of these kind of questions on the reading exam, and so they might be a little bit more difficult to answer. This one is testing a really fine understanding in reading. Most of the apples stocked in grocery stores don't actually come from Tianshan. It's not like they're picked there and then shipped to stores. The specific kinds of apples growing in this region are not the exact varieties that consumers might purchase. And it doesn't sound like he found new apple varieties that he's trying to sell to people. It seems like he's found the ancestors, like where other apples that we eat nowadays come from. Number 13, passage A makes which of the following claims about plant species that are found in Kazakhstan? Is it A, approximately 157 species of cultivated temperate fruits originated in Kazakhstan? B, 90% of all domesticated crops are either direct precursors or close wild relatives of plant species found in Kazakhstan? C, of the plant species found in Kazakhstan, 90% are species of apples? Or D, aside from apples, at least 157 plant species found in Kazakhstan are either direct precursors or close wild relatives of domesticated crops? Take a moment and see if you can't find the answer. Okay, the right answer for number 13 is D. Aside from apples, at least 157 plant species are direct precursors or close wild relatives of domesticated crops. For questions like this, feel free to go back up and try to see directly in that passage where an answer might be. And I'm looking right around here. At least 157 other plant species found in Kazakhstan are either direct precursors or close wild relatives, including 90% of all cultivated temperate fruits. So a really close reading of that passage is going to show you that D is the right answer there. And that is a key ideas and details question, which basically just tests your reading comprehension. Then we move on to passage B. Number 14. Passage B most strongly suggests that Vavilov was motivated to become an agricultural scientist primarily because he, is it F, wanted to have one of his findings published, G, aimed to work with a famous botanist, H, wished to remedy a personal financial crisis, or J, hoped to help feed others? Take a moment and see if you can't find the right answer. Okay, the right answer for question number 14 is J, hoped to help feed others. I remember reading up here something about hungry Russian families. Yeah, right over here. He hoped that by combining a more diverse seed portfolio with knowledge from both traditional farmers and collaborating scientists, the number of Russian families suffering from hunger might be reduced. So again, if you're paying really close attention while you read, the right answer there is going to jump out. That's kind of a rephrasing of what it says up in the passage. And we don't really see anything else up here referenced in the passage. Number 15, the author of passage B uses the phrase whittle away, line 80, to refer to the way that apple varieties have been, is it A, gradually lost from nursery catalogs, farmers markets, and the American table? B, modified by plant breeders, entomologists, and pathologists to meet specialized needs? C, weeded out by scientists until only the few thousand most resilient varieties remained? Or D, pared down in 1904 to the few varieties that nursery catalogs wanted to feature? Let's go back up to line 80, and then I'll let you think for a sec before I share with you what the answer is. Here we go, and whittle away we have done. You might remember from an earlier video that whenever it references a line, I do like to start a little bit before that line just to get a little bit of context and to sort of refresh my brain as far as what we were talking about when the line in question comes up. So let's see. The forests of wild foragers and orchards are the wellsprings of diversity that plant breeders, pathologists, and entomologists return to every time our society whittles the resilience in our fields and orchards down to its breaking point. And whittle away we have done. Take a moment and see if you can't find the right answer. Okay, the right answer for number 15 is A, gradually lost from nursery catalogs, farmers markets, and the American table. To whittle is to carve down, to take away, to narrow down. This is a craft and structure question also. And I'm not sure if I said for number 14, but number 14 was key ideas and details question. And if you kept on reading, maybe even after line 80, that's going to help clarify what whittle away means for you. Like the rest of the passage up here, whittle away we have done, talking about how fewer and fewer varieties are available for consumers. So 15 was A. Moving on to number 16. As it is used in lines 82 to 83, the phrase named and nurtured most nearly means, is it F, nominated and encouraged, G, identified and cultivated, H, pointed to and groomed, or J, cited and fed? Let's go back up to the line real fast. Okay. Here in North America, according to apple historian Dan Bussey, some 16,000 apple varieties have been named and nurtured over the last 4 centuries. All right, take a moment and see if you can't find the right answer. The right answer for number 16 is G, identified and cultivated. Named, identified, nurtured, cultivated. Those are really going to link up. Number 16 is a craft and structure question also. The other answers don't really match up definitionally, to both named and nurtured, to something being identified and then something being grown, cared for, cultivated. Number 17, the last one that just deals with passage B. In passage B, it can most reasonably be inferred from the third paragraph, lines 74 to 79, that centers of crop diversity became crucially important when, is it A, plant breeders would like to learn more about the plant species of Central Asia? B, problems with a cultivated crop require experts to research a new variety of the crop? C, consumers would like more variety in grocery produce departments? Or D, disputes among plant breeders, pathologists, and entomologists led to a reduction in crop variety? Let's go up to 74 to 79 before we try to think of an answer. All right. In a very real sense, the forests of wild foragers and the orchards of traditional farmers and such centers of crop diversity are the wellsprings of diversity that plant breeders, pathologists, and entomologists return to every time our society whittles the resilience in our fields and orchards down to its breaking point. So it sounds like these forests are a source of something for many different people, and they're places we can return to and get things that we need. So with that in mind, see if you can't find an answer for number 17. All right, the right answer for number 17 is B. Problems with a cultivated crop require experts to research a new variety of the crop. Here we are finding new knowledge and trying to figure out ways to solve a problem. And going back to centers of crop diversity, going back to these natural sources of so many different kinds of crops can help us solve these problems. Number 17, by the way, was a key ideas and details question. All right, now we're moving on to 18 to 20, and I'm going to spoil it for you guys. 18, 19, and 20 are all integration of knowledge and ideas questions. Remember, this is the smallest category of questions. They tend to be the most difficult, and so really focusing on these is going to be important. Let's see if you guys can nail these. Number 18, which of the following statements best describes the difference in the tone of the two passages? Is it F, passage A is defensive, whereas passage B is dispassionate? G, passage A is solemn, whereas passage B is optimistic? H, passage A is celebratory, whereas passage B is cautionary? Or J, passage A is accusatory, whereas passage B is sentimental? Even if you don't know what tone means, by reading through these different answers, you can probably infer that tone refers to emotion or feeling, general sort of sentiment behind how the passage approaches the content. So take a moment now and see if you can't find an answer. All right, for number 18, the answer is H. Passage A is celebratory, whereas passage B is cautionary. Celebratory meaning that it celebrates Vavilov. It recognizes his achievements and really says, how what he's thought about and the research that he's done, what he's found is helpful for people. They really celebrate him. And B is pretty cautionary. I mean, it ends here on this note where we've lost so much of the diversity of apples, where we've whittled away, to use that word again, the kind of apple varieties that we study and can consume. That would be a little bit more cautionary, perhaps more like something wrong is happening, or we need to be careful, or we need to maybe really think about what we're doing and what it could lead to down the line. And 18, of course, integration of knowledge and ideas. Moving on to number 19. Compared to the author of passage A, the author of passage B provides more information about B. A, reduction in the number of apple varieties in North America over the past 4 centuries. B, methods Vavilov used to prove to other scientists that the apples growing in the Tian Shan are the ancestors of the modern apple. C, number of apple varieties that are thriving in Kazakhstan today. Or D, techniques used by researchers to determine the regions with the greatest genetic diversity in plants. Take a moment and see if you can find the answer. All right. Hot off the heels of our discussion of number 18, the answer for number 19 is A, reduction in the number of apple varieties in North America over the past 4 centuries. The author of passage A doesn't go in on that nearly as much as passage B does. I mean, passage B ends with that. That's sort of the exclamation point at the end. It's the end of this cautionary tale, the moral of the story in a sense. And it's a reason too why Tian Shan is going to matter. This diversity really matters in this region. And comparing the diversity in that region to the lack of diversity that we have here at home is a really important point in passage B. So for number 19, A is going to be the right answer. And this, of course, is an integration of knowledge and ideas question. Finally, number 20, we're almost done. Last one, folks. Passage A quotes Vavilov as saying, I could see with my own eyes that I had stumbled upon the center of origin for the apple, lines 11 through 12. In passage B, this quote is directly, is it F, invoked by the passage author as he imagines what Kazakhstan looked like centuries ago? G, used to support an argument by USDA scientists? H, paraphrased by Salova? Or J, refuted by Bussey? Let's go back to 11 through 12 real fast just to see. So 11 through 12. All right, so this paragraph, I remember this talking about all these, the thickets of wild apples, all of these tremendously beautiful apples. Nowhere else in the world do apples grow thickly as a forest or with such incredible diversity. Amazed by what he saw, Vavilov wrote, I could see with my own eyes that I had stumbled upon the center of origin for the apple. Like this must be where apples come from. In passage B, this quote is directly, let's see if we can find it. You might look towards the beginning of passage B to find an answer. If you have the PDF up, you might switch over to it and pause if you'd like. All right. See if you can't find an answer for number 20. And the right answer for number 20 is H, paraphrased by Salova. If we come back up here, we can see that quote. Kazakh conservationist Tatyana Salova credits him with first recognizing that Kazakhstan was the center of origin and diversity for apples. It is not surprising that when Vavilov first came to Kazakhstan to look at plants, he was so amazed. Nowhere else in the world do apples grow as a forest. That is one reason why he stated that this is probably where the apple was born. This was its birthing grounds. There she is putting his quote in her own words. And to paraphrase is to do exactly that, to put something else in your own words, to shorten it or to summarize it using your own phrasing. So number 20 is H, and of course that's an integration of knowledge and ideas question. So there we have the practice passage read and answered. Here are the answers, just in case you missed one. I've also identified what kind of question they are. Note that this passage has a lot of integration of knowledge and ideas questions. We haven't had a lot of those so far, so it's important to point that out. Pause on this screen if you need to compare any previous answers. Finally, consider big tip number 3. This is from collegevine.com. Don't slow down just because you don't understand something. It's essential to keep the momentum going. If something trips you up in the passage, a word you don't know or information that's confusing, mark the area to come back later. Often, you'll be able to figure it out in context. The passage that we just read had some pretty big scientific words and phrasing. For example, entomologist. If you don't know what that is, getting hung up on that word is going to be a pitfall that you want to avoid. Keep going, really keep up that momentum, and make sure that you can go back to things later and read. You can also, if you just get the general sense of what's happening before and after a word or a phrase you don't know, you might be able to figure out what it means just using context clues. Especially on the social sciences and the natural sciences sections, where you might be reading about technical matters you're not familiar with, keeping up your momentum is really important. Keeping up momentum is important so that you can complete as much of the test as possible. Ideally, of course, you're going to answer all the questions, but really making sure to keep up that rate of work is going to be essential for you. All right, and that is week number 5 done. Getting ready for week number 6 here. Next week, the video is going to feature passage number 3 from that PDF linked below. This will be a humanities passage called The Quiet Sideman by Colin Fleming. We're going to read the passage together and practice answering the questions just like we did last time and today. There's no need to do anything outside of AI time to prepare for next week, so you have no homework. You're going to continue to learn tips, tricks, and strategies for accurately answering questions on the exam. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.